Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. I am Carrie Linklater, your chairperson today, and I'm joined to my immediate left by Diane Knight, and my far left, Tracy Anderson, and our city assessor tonight is Mr. Arif Dust Mohammed, and our admin secretary is Katie Sutherland. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparison of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. And as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. Would you like to swear everybody in?
Do you swear or you affirm? So please state your name.
Arif Dust Mohammed.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name.
Rocky Nicole.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Neufeld and Mr. Das Mohammed. And you want to start us off with 909 Gateway.
Good evening, everybody. So, Border Revision File Number 19-4382, Road Number 040072565525. Address is 909 Gateway Road. Roll year is 2020. Reference date is April 1st, 2018, and the assessed value is $1,242,000. Parcel use is industrial light manufacturing. There's one building, one premise, one story. Actual year built was 1960. Effective year built is 1962. Wall height is 20 feet. Zoning is M1 manufacturing light. The land area is 153,899 square feet, which works out to approximately 3.53 acres. Plan area is 16,096 square feet. Same with the, gross floor area is 16,360. Leasable area is 16,096. And the land to plan area is 9.56 to 1. If you turn the page, there's no subject property leases. The subject is owner occupied. If we turn to page 12 and 13, there we see the income expense number that was returned by the owner, and we see that it is indeed owner-occupied building. On page 3, there you have my comparables. So all leases are current in relation to the reference date. Effective ages range from 1958 to 1990. Wall heights range from 14 feet to 24 feet. The leasable areas range from approximately 13,000 square feet to 19,000 square feet. Net rents range from $5.50 per square foot to $8 per square foot, but most of the net leases range from $5.50 to $6.50. Turning the page to page 4, there you have our workup. So we're utilizing a poor quality income rate of $5.75 per square foot net. We're allowing for 2.5% vacancy loss, even though it's owner occupied. We're allowing for 2% non-recoverable expenses. We're allowing a vacancy shortfall of $3.75 per square foot, which results in a net operating income of $86,924. We're utilizing a cap rate of 7% to take into account the age, condition, and location of the subject. This results in a capitalized value of $1,241,771, which works out to an assessed value of $1,242,000. So if we turn to page 8, actually on page 6 there we have our cap rate study. Page 7 is the Municipal Act. Then on page 8 we have our subject map there on the top and the subject parcel boundaries at the bottom. Page 9 we have the overhead views of the subject property. Then on page 10 we have another overhead view, and the rest, page 10 and 11, is the street view. And I just wanted to point out on page 18 we have some external market data. So if you look at the market overview on page 18, second paragraph, you'll note that it is the industrial market in Winnipeg is very active. There's more users than available space, and you can see there the vacancy rate in Winnipeg overall remained at 3%. So, taking into account the location, size, and age of the subject and the condition, we believe that the assessed value of $1.242 million to be fair and equitable, and I respectfully ask that the board confirm this value. So I'll be open to questions now.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Yes, the evaluation workup on page 5, Form 5, was this all from the model?
Yes.
And no rising, etc.?
No.
No, this is a comment here about utilizing a poor quality income rate of 575.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that been inserted. Is that just a comment you inserted?
That's my comment. The model, we chose a poor quality for the income rate in the model for this
And
property.
that's as low as that went, 575?
Right, yeah.
Now, when you put in poor quality, what does it do to the capitalization rate?
The cap rate is based on location and condition and location of the subject, so it's remained same. So I guess there must be some improvements done to the building, and I think the building is a brick, so it's site-specific, a brick manufacturing plant.
Correct.
Yeah.
But if it's poor quality, do you think 7 is a fair number?
It's poor quality because there's not that many brick manufacturers who rent this property. I don't.
Well, there aren't any.
Yeah, except for these, maybe.
Does your model differentiate between manufacturing and warehousing and flex warehousing?
I cannot answer that. I'm not sure.
Are there any manufacturers in your model database?
Yes.
Manufacturing
zoned.
or cap rates? Do you have any cap rates to your knowledge in that base? Because I mean, I'm asking the question because most manufacturing are sold from end user to end user. They're rarely investment properties. So I'm wondering, to your knowledge, are there any in your cap rate database?
That differentiates between manufacturing and non-manufacturing?
Yes.
No.
Or other uses like warehousing. Now on your sample page 15, and of course these are samples that are to support the model, they're not for the property, correct?
Correct.
And the 4 at the bottom, to your knowledge, are those manufacturers?
To my knowledge, I'm not sure. I couldn't answer that. These are just owner-provided income and expense information, that we've received, and we've worked out our cap rates, and we see that our cap rates are in line with what they are reporting.
The market study that you're referring to, page 18 and 19 from Cushman and Wakefield,
Right.
do they provide definitions as to what constitutes an industrial building in their study?
Not in this study.
How about page 20, the Colliers? Are you aware of the Colliers?
I know they do, but
standards?
I do not have them with me.
Okay, so you're not aware that we do not track buildings like this? That there are definitions?
No, I did not know that.
Okay. Why are all these yellow marks all over the page?
So, sorry?
All this yellow, I'm having a hard time reading it.
Oh, I think the printer was on error that day.
I told you it was gonna fuck you. There's a little bit too much yellow on here. The rents that you've selected, page 3, did you select these rents on page 3?
Yes, I did.
Are any of these manufacturers?
I think they are a mix of M1 and M2.
But do you know what activity goes on in their buildings?
Yes, well, from the tenants that are in there, I could kind of guess, yes.
Are any of them manufacturers?
I would, well, number 2 for sure. And number 4.
Number 2 and number 4.
I believe number 4.
Okay. And have you been in the site?
No, we're just swamped right now, and there's no time to inspect anything.
Those are my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
I have no questions.
Ms. Knight? No. I have no questions. Mr. Newfield, if you'd like to proceed.
Thank you. The subject property is Barkman Concrete, and they manufacture paving stones in the site. It was brought in the adjoining property, which is also Barkman Concrete, and what is interesting about this particular business, it's one of the few that's probably less vulnerable to competition from imports, because the cost of freight on cement makes it prohibitive to make it somewhere else. It just costs too much to ship in. They've been in the site since 1960, predating the residential construction nearby, and they have an M2 zoning. The zoning today was doubtful if their use would be approved. The zoning on page 15 permits into light manufacturing but not heavy manufacturing, and this is heavy manufacturing, but it is a legal non-conforming use. Because remember, the zoning that we're looking at today was passed in 2006, and they've been in there since 1960, so they can continue their usage. However, where they're particularly vulnerable will be should they wish to change their business model and require a permit for doing so, they won't get it. And they'll also face significant neighbor opposition, because the general rule of thumb is it's first in, first right. So because they came in before the housing, their rights are established, but should they request a change, there will be neighborhood opposition. On page 8, the top of page 8, the zoning standard, in the M zoning, there's a note on A, and it talks about setbacks, and it says you have to provide a 25-foot yard on the rear lot line, and it has to be landscaped. Now you can see that they did not do that, because again, they predate this is the zoning bylaw. A change in use will require enforcement of that. So it means, in the marketplace, what it means, as long as you're happy continuing to make stones, you'll be left alone. But should you have a change, you won't. This affects the marketability of the site because there's no guarantee that someone will be interested in continuing on with this usage. It's somewhat unique. Now, the plant itself is, the subject property is comprised of the plant, and you can see from the pictures that there's storage areas, towers, mixing bays, hoppers. The actual office for it is in the building next door at 901. Don't know if we've shown that in the picture, but we have. It's on our page 2. The assessor actually has it labeled on his page 9. 901 is where Barkman have their office. And this particular property doesn't have an office in terms of an administration office. It has a performance room for the plant. It's just a working facility. The point is, it wouldn't be allowed today, and this in our business, when we're looking at the value of properties, it isn't just for what you're using it today, it's for what it could be used in the future. And this will then speak to capitalization. As far as the rent is concerned, the quality, I don't think poor quality is properly reflected in the assessor's rent. Now, we have a slight error in ours, but I'll get to that shortly. On page 5 is the interior of the site. I took these pictures. This was my inspection from about 2 years ago. And you can see that this is a very simple, there's a steel frame, and the top picture shows some of the mixing bins. The bottom picture is a hopper for product that gets mixed and poured into casks. And I was there in the winter 2 years ago. The overhead pictures, especially the assessor's page 9, show the yard usage. Now, again, this is outside storage. M2 allows outside storage with screening. Whatever they are currently doing is legal, but it's not conforming. So, again, that's an issue that will only rear its head on the marketability of it as an alternate use. So we have an error in here, and this was at our end because last year we went through this property in some detail, and we did agree on the square footage at 16,096, and it's in my handwritten notes. Unfortunately, the person who prepared this brief did not review those notes. In the old valuation, when we first began discussing it with the city, there were some outbuildings subsequently demolished, and there was some space which they called mezzanine, which just turned out to be racking. So the assessor's number is correct. I'm not changing my number as a result of it. We'll just accept a higher rent per square foot. So we are using 16,096. My number changes to $5.36 a square foot. And we'll leave the same rent in. To be fair to the assessor, because we did not warn him that we were going to go lower. The only change that makes is that the shortfall will differ at a lesser amount, and I'll tell you that number shortly. The rest of the valuation, we're using a higher vacancy rate, and we're relying on the Johnson report, which I noted the assessor was discussing as being one of their reference tools. It's unfortunate that they also don't use this report for helping with vacancy. The industrial vacancy is not it is not 2.5%. There's nowhere near the city that's 2.5%. We've provided a copy of the Johnson report, which is a far more thorough document, on page 7, and it shows that the overall vacancy rate in the city is on industrial 7.2%. Now, the person who wrote this up believes this is in East Kildonan. I know it's not. So you would just disregard that. The sector that it is in doesn't have a neighborhood in the Johnson report because there aren't a lot of industrial there at all, so it doesn't warrant classification. regardless, the rate is very similar to the, almost identical to the overall city rate, so it stands. Non-recoverables, I think by now we've all heard the issues on non-recoverable, and I do have lots of stuff prepared, and I'm sure you don't want to see it again, and I accede to your wishes, your unspoken wishes. The point's been made. But what I will say about non-recoverables is no one has the right to change a valuation standard retroactively just for themselves. It's like saying to a doctor, the government has decided we're only going to use half the anesthetic because that's our new rule. The doctor would say, too bad, you know, this is our business, our job, we decide that. And I'm holding the same arrogance in terms of the concept of non-recoverables. I'm an appraiser. This is what we do. You don't change our rules because you don't like them. And we do not have statutory assessments in Manitoba, so the assessor cannot unilaterally impose this. The law says they're supposed to appraise at market. The market requires non-recoverables. And no profession will accept a mandate on their own job work product because the government says so. It's a professional irresponsibility. That's all I'm going to say on that. On structural reserve, which the assessor does apply at 2%, we're using a rate of 25 cents a square foot, and that is to the most standard shortfall, or sorry, the most standard reserve required is for roof replacement. And I had the very good fortune the other day of proving myself right, because we had a property where the owner had actually put in his roof replacement costs, and it worked out to, on 25-year life of a roof, that the 25 cents a square foot, we nailed it right on the head. It was a perfect fit, and that's the real world. The structural reserve is for things that the landlord will have to pay in the lease. Roofs, they always have to pay for. Some of the HVAC, it's always questionable from lease to lease, so we don't consider this structural reserve required for it, but the roof is. So it is higher than what the assessor has, but in some cases a little bit lower, and it really depends on the property type. Because a high-income property, such as a office or a retail that's generating rents of $25 a foot, if you put 25 cents a foot as your structural reserve, it'll be less than 2%. But an industrial facility that's only generating rents at $5, the 25 cents a foot forms a greater, higher percentage, and it's just the nature of that situation. As far as shortfall goes, that we do have to make an adjustment on that basis because the square footage is wrong, and it's a downward adjustment which indicates a higher value. And also I noticed below that we're using 211 for utilities. There are major portions of this building that lack utilities, like water, because they make bricks. But so we're accepting the assessor's lower number at 375. It changes the 5955 to 4406, and the reason it's higher than the assessor is we are using a higher vacancy rate. But we're agreeing with the 375 for this building. That brings my NOI up to 66,939. And we're applying the same capitalization rate, and the value now becomes 743,764, rounded to 744,000. The selection of a capitalization rate is based on the comments I've made, the location, the legal non-conforming zoning issues, the proximity to residential, which in the industrial world is a negative because you won't get approval for any changes because there are more boats next door. It's just the reality of things. I've worked for many clients who are trying to expand their facilities where there are areas of residential, and coincidentally we came to an agreement on once, so I can't tell the story there, but it was one of our clients who was trying to expand beside Linden Ridge and bring in a metal processing facility closer to the residents. Not a chance. They put them down right away, didn't even make it to community committee. And that's just a reality. So your alternate uses become limited, and that's bad news for them. The other issue was that it does not have its own office. It relies on the one next door. So the two should be taken in consideration. The quality and condition, I think the pictures speak to this. The concept of capitalization has to account for remaining economic life primarily, not size, not location. It's remaining economic life is the most important characteristic. How much longer can I continue to generate income from this building without having to spend a lot of money? Now, the true nature of working out capitalization rate generally requires a 40-year investment window, and then you discount it back to today's time. So you want to get 40 years and sell it at the end. If a property is got a 25-year life, then that cap rate is driven higher, and that's really the pressure on the upward movement of this. And I have some examples as well. As far as rents go to support this, on page 3 we have a number of rents, and we use these rents an awful lot. Most all of these come from Colliers, and where they're selected because they're free and clear of inducements or any sort of negative or positive factors that would make the rent move in a direction that doesn't reflect market. And what I mean by that are tenant allowances, tenant inducements, and free rents, that sort of thing. These are clean and selected. Now, the majority of these are not manufacturing. The majority of these are warehousing or flex, because that's the majority of our stock. But one manufacturing close to it that I was going to point out was a third of the way down the page at 2039 Doolittle. It's actually a food processing facility, and that's at $4 a square foot. It is a bit larger than our subject, not much more, and it is virtually the same age and condition as our subject. There are a few others on there. For capitalization, firstly, the Colliers study, I was asking the assessor about this on page 24. We have our standards, and I think Cushman and Wakefield have similar standards. Their numbers may differ slightly. But you can see that under our industrial standards, we would not touch this property in our study. We don't track this. This is miscellaneous. This is manufacturing. People don't rent and sell manufacturing buildings for investment purposes because the usage is so harsh that the buildings have lesser lives. In the industrial world, a good investment would be flex warehouse, where it's really an office. And a concept of the difference about what we're looking at is on page 40. Now, the bottom of page 40, that's what characterizes industrial in the world of the people who are tracking caps. That buildings like that, not brick manufacturers. We do have some cap rate examples, and point out a few that have manufacturing relationship. On page 34, the fourth one down is 1535 Seal, and that's sold with the business. They make fiberglass windows. It was 8.29%. The rate is lower because it's in Southwest Winnipeg. 100 Paquin made in-car heaters, and that usage is now gone. The company went bankrupt, but it capped at 8.47%. At the time it was sold, it was hoped that the large international covenant would drive that cap lower, and of course the company in the United States declared Chapter 11. 51 Aikens is a manufacturer. They made HVAC for industrial, commercial uses, direct or indirect fire makeup airs. And what those are is the furnaces that would sit on top of a roof that suck in the air at a very high rate and blow it into a building where there's an exhaust fan, and they literally make up air. It's a very simple furnace concept. Company was ICE, and it capped at 11%. Now, that rate was higher, but due to location and lower land area. However, the quality is probably better than our subject. There is an interesting one. This is actually a brick manufacturer, 1436 Chevrier. It capped at 7.1. I report them all. However, that was a portfolio sale, and 2 of the 3 sites were in Alberta, Calgary, and Red Deer. And so it's not a Winnipeg only sale. And it's believed that and it was a national company. But we're desperately looking for manufacturers. The last is 35 Winfield. And I note that the assessor has used this rent as well, and that capped at 9.48%. The appeal from 2018, it's under appeal at the municipal board. I think we have the same problem with this property and manufacturing properties in general, is that there seems to be a very single-minded vision that all industrial is the same, and it is not. There are 37 different types of industrial, just as many as there are names for snow in other languages. They are all different, and manufacturing is the least desirable. And the Flux warehouse picture I mentioned to you, that is the most desirable, and the cap rates must follow them. It is not one size fits all. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, just a couple. Sorry, I missed, where did you get the 461? Was it from the comparables on page 3?
I changed that. Oh, okay. Yeah. What we do to help us out here is to, on page 4, this is a graph, and all the properties on page 3 are put into an Excel spreadsheet, and we do a trend line, and you see that there's an intercept in red, and the intercept was set at 18,716. So it's just this is
So,
mass appraisal where we show our work.
so if you look at your page 3, actually in all fairness, Mr. Neufeld, I know you said you didn't write this report, but the roll number on here that you have it's an old number, and it's actually 2 properties, and I think that's where the 18,000 is coming from.
Yes, you got it.
The roll number has changed now.
Yeah, that's correct. And that, but I reduced the size, increased the rent, but didn't change them. We took a higher rent, so our actual applied rent is 536.
Okay. 536?
Yeah. Let me, you are correct. It's coming back to me.
So I was just wondering on page 3, the comparables between, say, 12,000 and 19,000.
Well, they would definitely, the rents would go up from 461,
okay.
which I have done.
Okay. So you're using 536?
That's correct.
Okay. And you said about the cap rate. So in your opinion, is it the cap rate or the effective age that indicates the remaining economic life of a property?
Well, the remaining economic life is it's not, like effective age means it is not the right number, right? What you want to do, the way of figuring this out is to start with, you put the age, and then you put the effective age, and then you put the lifespan, and you subtract it, and you get remaining economic life. That's the textbook way of helping you determine this. On this particular property, we haven't given you all the numbers, but we would put the remaining economic life at 15 to 20 years. And that doesn't mean it's going to fall apart in 15 to 20 years. That means you're going to have to spend money to keep extending the remaining economic life. If you have to spend money that comes off capital, and the capital requirement impacts the cap rate. Because if you know there's a cash call coming in 10 to 15 years, you can't sell the property for more, and it drives the cap rate up.
I don't have any more questions.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
I have no question.
Can we ask anything about that?
The 2018 you said is under appeal?
That's correct.
And what value was that being appealed?
The appeal was on $997,000, and our number last year was $742,000.
Okay. Thank you.
So, page 7. So this area that's not on here, you indicated this property because it's Gateway. Are you saying it's in North Kildonan?
Tell me, is this in North Kildonan? Okay, good. Yes, it's
Okay.
North Kildonan.
So, just curious then, because it's, and this is the Johnson?
Yes.
Yeah, so no North Kildonan on
No,
here.
there's no inventory to speak of. So, you know, I can tell you.
So I'm just going to say this property is truly an anomaly.
Yes.
Actually, it's
I mean-
East Kildonan. If you look at the map on page 8,
Page 8 of your brief?
yes.
I'm not entirely sure. But let me,
Page 8 on my brief.
see, East Central.
Yeah, because it's Cambridge. Yeah. Just outside the line.
Okay, Kildonan in the Johnson report, but it just says Kildonan. Do we have different Kildonans?
Well, there's East Kildonan.
But in this chart. Okay,
Yeah.
East Kildonan. So, okay, our people did get it right.
Okay.
So, in the Kildonan, the issue there is that the inventory in that area is very, very small. It's 360,000 square feet. And the total inventory in the city is about, I believe, 26 million of space, 27 million. So the area is far too small to generate an accurate rate, even though it supports the other ones. I have to make clear that would be the case. See, for example, there's 19 buildings and 2 of them have vacancies in that area. That's just not big enough. But it supports what we put in.
Okay.
But I wouldn't want to rely on that and tell you that that's accurate. That's why we went to the whole city.
Okay. So you inspected this property 2 years ago, you said?
Yes.
Okay. So being a 1960 building, can you speak to the condition overall?
Poor, and you have to wear a breathing mask because of the dust level, and the dust is in everything. That's just the nature of the business. It continues in its current usage, would be the only usage you could envision. There won't be another one.
Well, because it's surrounded by the residential, correct?
It's surrounded by residential, and there's absolutely no point trying to, say, convert it to another use. Let's just say that you have an industrial use that the neighbors might like, a basket weaving facility.
Right.
You're not going to spend a nickel on this property to spruce it up.
Yes.
You're bulldozing.
Yes, because I can imagine making bricks is, as you said, messy, heavy.
The dust gets into everything.
Yeah. Sorry, you made a comment about there not being any water?
There are parts of the building that don't get water, and there are parts of the building that aren't heated. The actual room where the casts are made, it doesn't need heat because the heat comes out of the brick as it's being formed, and they're running shift work. And there's also a dry chemical room. One of the rooms on the outside, I'm trying to remember, by the hopper where they don't need heat because you're just keeping dry chemicals in there. We weren't going to separate it out and put a different rent rate on it. We just use an overall rate.
Mr. Dos Mohammed, can you said you had not had a chance to inspect this property?
No.
Do you have it in your notes when it was last inspected?
I do not have my notes, the notes from our system with me, no.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions. Do either of you wish for a summation?
Just briefly, I know that when you ask for a number that's below last year and have it under appeal, that we are met with some concern, like, you're kind of asking a lot out of us. This is a dirty manufacturing building. This isn't something that the market tracks. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will go on to 450 DeSantis.
Board resolution file number 19-4636, roll number 0606101000. Address is 450 DeSalvo Street. Roll year is 2020. Reference date is April 1st, 2018. Assessed value is $4,485,000. So parcel use is industrial light manufacturing. The number of buildings is 10. Number of premises is 1. The stories range from 1 to 2 stories. Actual year built was 1925 to 1997. We're using an effective year built of 1964. The wall heights range from 13 feet to 34 feet. It's zoned manufacturing, M2 manufacturing general. The land area is 458,698 square feet, which works out to approximately 10.53 acres. Plan area is 140,381 square feet. There is a basement of 7,070 square feet. The gross floor area is 161,938. The leasable area is 160,489 square feet, and the land to plan area is 3.27 to 1. Turning over to page 2, so you can see there was a sale on the subject property back in 2015, 3 years prior to the reference date, for $4.83 million. So there is no subject property leases because the subject is fully owner occupied, and on page 11 and 12 we'll see the income expense report that they submitted. On page 3 are my comparables. So all leases are current in relation to the reference date. Effective ages range from 1963 to 2001. Wall heights range from 14 feet to 36 feet. Leasable areas range from approximately 131,000 square feet to approximately 190,000 square feet. And net rents range from $5.17 to $15.58. Although if you were to remove that $15.58, rents range from $5.17 to $7.91. On page 4 is our workup. So we're utilizing an income quality rate, net rental rate of $2.49 per square feet. We're allowing for 5% vacancy loss, even though it's owner occupied. We're allowing for 2% non-recoverable expenses. We're allowing for a vacancy shortfall of $3.75 per square feet, even though there is no vacancy. This results in a NOI of $341,952. We're utilizing an overall cap rate of 7.75%. That gives us a capitalized value of $412,284, which works out to an assessed value of $4,412,000. So if you turn to page 8, there is the map of the subject area. I have it zoomed in and zoomed out, so you can see it's quite a large property. It's surrounded by the Seine River there, so they don't have neighbors on the other side. On page 9, there is the parcel boundaries. You can see that it goes across the road there. And then on page 10 is the overhead view. So, taking into consideration the most recent sale in 2015 for $4.85 million, which was 3 years prior to the reference date, the state of the industrial real estate market in Winnipeg, we believe the assessed value of $4.412 million to be fair and equitable, and I respectfully ask that the board confirm that value. Those are my, well, I'd be open to questions there.
Thank you.
You discussed the sale, who's the vendor, who's the purchaser?
I don't have, they never did submit the sales information, and I did not get a chance to do a title search on it.
What business do they carry on in this time?
I haven't inspected it.
Did it change at this board sale?
I think they bought the business, is what we discussed earlier.
They bought the business and the building.
But I'm not sure if this is just the building or what I should have pulled the title. That's not.
No, did it include their plants in Corman Park, Saskatchewan, and Olds, Alberta?
I don't have that info, but if you do, I'd be willing to take a look at that.
And, okay. Now, page 4 and 5, are these all from the model?
Yes, they are.
There's no manual overrides here?
The only thing is we're using a below average income quality.
Right, so you put in below average and then it gets the rent of $249.
Right, yes.
And the rents that are listed to support this, page 3, did you select these?
I did select those. I could not find any lower rents than what I got there.
It does not appear that your rents are anywhere near to
No,
what you have
no,
in
it does
place.
not. And I'm assuming that somebody inspected it, and that's why the override was there for below average.
You used a effective year. I'm sorry, you said it was 1964?
Yes, we were utilizing 1964.
My sheet says 1925.
Right, I forgot to change that, so it should say 1964 there. Yeah.
Okay. And you were saying that the original age was 1925?
I think it was built in stages, so between 1925 and 1997.
Do you have the original field sheets?
Not with me, I do not.
Did you research the environmental database on this property?
I did not.
Does your model have the ability to change values for being registered with Manitoba Conservation?
If it was, I'm assuming that's why the below average rate is there.
You're assuming that?
I'm assuming it, just because I couldn't find rents to support, comparables to support this.
How about the land to building ratio? This is the fiscal calculation. In that calculation, did you account for the required federal, provincial, and city setbacks from the Seine River?
No, but because it's M2, I do not believe they require a lot of outdoor storage space because it's zone M2. If they did, I think M3 would be the proper.
Well, it's not a zoning question. It's river setbacks.
I did not. No, I did not.
You realize that there are river setbacks from prohibiting development to the river.
I would assume there are, yes.
Okay. And that wasn't taken into account on the usable land area?
Sorry, I can't.
Okay, no, that's fine. You didn't inspect, so you couldn't.
No.
Well, for example, page 10 has an aerial photograph, and you can see that the area, the owner's property, which extends to the Seine River, does in fact have a treat area, correct?
Correct, yes.
And had you measured, you would have noted that the closest point to the river was 200 feet, exactly, from the high water line to the building, forbidding development. But you say that doesn't come into effect on your land plan.
Because I didn't measure, I do not know if it includes the 200 or it doesn't include.
Okay. And those are my questions. A lot of my material will be rebuttal, yeah, but you've already seen it. It's already in here.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Anderson?
Just a couple questions. Just looking at your map here, and the address of the property is 450 Des Hotels, but that parcel there, that 445 Deschambault, is that, I know that parking is used for that?
I'm not sure where the address comes from, but the roll number that's all included in it.
No, it's a separate roll. Deschambault is a separate roll.
Sorry, you're talking about 450 and
This little portion right here with access to the
here's the parcel, so it would be this, that, and that.
That's why I was confused. I was wondering if it's all one, or is it?
No, it's whatever is in the purple highlighted there.
Okay. And then just kind of I'm confused with a question here. On the front of your brief, page 1 of your brief, the assessed value is $4,485,000, and then in your breakdown on page 4 and 5, it's $4,412,000.
Sorry, I didn't see that. I think we would be going with our work up there.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Knight?
Just back to the address of the property, to the map. So the map does not have the actual address property, because you're highlighting 445. And the actual, you're highlighting 445 on a whole different street.
Sorry?
I'm confused, I'm sorry, I'm the one who's
Your page
confused.
8, a top picture,
Yes.
that map says is labeled 445
Yeah,
Deschambault.
actually, so that would be the main building is 445, but the roll number is under 450, so and the roll includes the property.
Sorry, I misspoke earlier.
Okay, I'm just trying to get.
Yeah, so this would be so whatever is.
So this little piece of this salt here is where the address comes from?
Right, yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm just a little confused.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
So I think you said you did not have a chance to inspect this
No,
property.
we're just walking right now.
Yeah. And do you know the last time it was inspected?
I don't have my notes in front of me either.
Okay. So this is actual 1925 to 1997. And this is a 161,000 square foot building. So what portion of that square footage is 1925?
I do not know that either. But if you look at page 10, you could see that it's been piecework. So yeah. So what we're saying is, on average, we're using 1964 as the effective year.
Okay. So just wondering why you're using 1964.
So when there would have been permits taken out for additions, they would have adjusted the effective ages as they went along. So they would have taken the whole square footage
Right.
and then divided by whatever each year it was built, yeah.
But you don't know when the permits were taken out?
No, I do not know. I don't even think we can go back to 1997 for the permits on our system.
So you don't know at all the percentage of the building in terms of
No,
years?
but I know how we calculate the effective ages, and it's always on what square footage is built in what year.
So page 4 is model,
Page 4 is model, yes.
but did you make an adjustment on the vacancy? Because it's at 5%?
Sorry, did I?
Did you?
What we're seeing in that neighborhood is 5% vacancy. So,
Okay, so there was no adjustment?
No.
It's just, okay. Thank you, that's all my questions. Mr. Neufeld?
Thank you. There's a lot of errors in the facts that you were given, and my source of information was, I did an appraisal on this property in 2003, and that's when I joined Stevenson, and I was the new guy, so Patrick Hamilton put his name on it, and I did the work, and that's fine, that's the way you learn. And I went out and with him and we did the valuation of this site. At the time, we could still get the assessor's field sheets, and we requested them, and it was a bundle about that thick of field sheets with all the original drawings. It does date back to 1906. The sections, this is from my original work in 2003, and unfortunately somebody put a white box on top of it, but on page 12, the first section, which there's a white box on it, which I don't know how that happened, but the section number 1 is under the white box, and it goes all the way to section number 2. So this is the first section. This was built in 1906 with a full basement. A picture of it is shown on page 13, top left-hand corner. And so this at the time was the advanced nature of concrete reinforced posts, and you notice that they were 8 feet apart. So that's the nature of, that's what posts were at the time. They had to put a lot of them in there to hold the same footing, whereas today they can engineer a greater span. Now, the 1925 date happens because they added an upper level in 1925. So first floor and basement 1906, second floor 1925. The next additions date from the 50s, and they're all listed here in order all the way up to 1969. Now at there were, 1995, there were additions after this. The last addition was that I had in my records was number 10, and there was a building, I'll just make sure I give you the right location for it, because you'll see my sketch is missing a building extension. It was, where I have building number 10 and 12, it was made wider. Those are paint booths, or added on to. And what they make in this site are two things. One are those gas cans on page 13 that you see used in the field, the pickup truck tanks. And the other thing they make are the grain bins. West Steel is the brand. So every time you pass a farmer's field and you see the big West Steel, this is where they're made. What they do is they bring in their steel, and it used to come in by rail, and now it's all containered, and they bend it, and they shape it, and they make kits, and then the kits get shipped out to the users. And their area of coverage is broad. They are a net exporter, which is good news for Canada and for Winnipeg because they export. And they don't assemble on site. Now, I was mentioning Olds, Alberta. Olds, Alberta is another site there where they actually make the prefab cans and erect them, and they require a 60-foot silo to put them together and lift them up. North Corman Park in Saskatchewan is their other site where they have another function of this. And they're all originally they were all Westfield. Westfield became Vic West. Vic West sold to Ag Growth, business and everything, all going into one. And Ag Growth is not so much a sale as it was an investment. What do they call that? Venture capital. What was the nature of that transaction? Because they require the capital to expand, and again, a true exporter. Good for the economy. The land itself is interesting, and I have these from the original field sheets as well, which are still in the files over at Stevenson. Maybe I'll see if I can get Trevor to go down to the trailer and bring them out for us. But the land is bisected or trisected by railway lines, so that's why the unusual configuration. Now, the pieces that are left over, and I imagine the best representation is the assessor's page 9, looking at the lots. So the lot that's 5 and 7 is for parking. The lot that's part 8 is just grassed. And you can see that the rail line is planned 6705, and then Deschambault is the Deschambault right-of-way. They're pretty much ignoring that right-of-way, but they're still, it's not their land. And at one point in time, there was thought of putting a bridge across on the other side of the same river, and it does hook up almost to an area that would work. The most interesting thing about this land is if you look at the borders, for some reason, the Seine River is very straight. That's because in 1910, when they were working on the site, there was no such thing as Save Our Seine, so they straightened the river. And took the file that the city assessor has shows the changes over the years where it was like this, and then it became like this. And they don't allow people to do that anywhere, but it's happened in Winnipeg a lot. For example, was it Brookside? Which is now, used to be crooked, now it runs parallel to was it Empress, I'm thinking of. It's all been straightened out, nature's way. But 100 years ago, they did stuff like that. The building itself, a predominant part of the building is post-World War II construction, so it's built with the skylights. The interior of it, I didn't show you the best pictures, but it's pretty much the bottom of page 7 is kind of representative of what the building is like. Just see if there's a better shot. No, okay. Oh, you know what? I gave you the wrong page numbers before. I might have been looking at the last year's workup. Oh, I wasn't. There it is. Okay, sorry. Page 13, the picture with the tanks in it is pretty much how most of the building looks like. Now, what isn't picked up in here is that all of the beams that run across the building say right on them asbestos. They're all stamped with asbestos. And asbestos is still used in this facility because it's a flame retardant, and they do welding on the site. And asbestos is, deemed to be a health hazard, but it's a requirement for welders because it's pretty much the only substance that can deal with the open flames. There's a registration on it, number 89, a low number, just like the age. The other registration on the site has to do with there used to be several tanks on the site. On page 9 is the report, and it shows the parts per million and the date. This was a 1992 study. And of course, hydrocarbons have a half-life of quite a bit longer than 27 years. So it's definitely not a clean site. It's got asbestos and hydrocarbons, which are fine in its current use. But years ago, we were looking at alternate alternative places for them to expand into and trying to help them market their site. And the best use would have been great, would have been multifamily on the river, but there's no way you could develop on a multifamily on the site because of those issues. So it is what it is. We're using a rent of $2.25 a foot, and there are some low-end rents that we had looked at, but truthfully, the ones we looked at are far superior to this. There is a rent on page 3, a large building at 1821 Wellington, and that's the old Eaton's Warehouse of $2, but that's a superior building. It coincidentally has a rail siding, just like the Subject does. Subject has a rail building just for covering. As I've said, they used to take shipments in, but rail just isn't working anymore for them, so everything is trucking. But that rail line in front of their site is active, the one that runs through their site. The other thing to mention is transportation routes is on the map, is that they are in a residential part of the city. There is one other business immediately south of them. I think it's Pilkington Glass. It's a glass company. They, of course, have also been there for quite some time. So the trucking has a particular route, and I'm just trying to remember. They can't use Desautels. I think they'd all have to come down Deschambault and to go in and out. And it is a sore point in the neighborhood as far as the trucks going in and out and difficult relations with the neighbors. And time-consuming for the truckers because it does take an extra 5 minutes a load to deal with the routing into this area. And the streets themselves aren't really conducive to trucks because they're built as residential streets. So truck turning area is somewhat limited on it. It's not the best site, but it's been there for 110 years, and might be there for another 110. I don't know. The other factors, again, the vacancy was calculated the same way. Now, one thought we had here is in previous years, where we've actually managed to get an inspection, and this went back many years with other assessors. Some of them recommended putting a high vacancy rate on to deal with these issues, and that was acceptable too. And when I mean high, I'm talking 20%. That was a recommendation we had made in 2012 roll. And but 2014, I don't think it was the same issue. But there was an agreement reached in 2014. 2016 and 18 are both under appeal at the municipal board. I'm pretty convinced that this site, like the earlier one we spoke of, can be resolved with an inspection. I think all we need to do is take the assessor through this building. They understand what the difficulties are with this. The ability to sell this property and obtain a market value is so limited. There is no alternate use for it. At one point, we had talked to the city about possibly a works yard and a land swap and redevelopment elsewhere. The talks went nowhere. As I said, I've worked for the company for now 16 years, 17 years. And included in that were many studies to look at different ways of getting a more productive site. One of the issues they have is they have 160,000 square feet. If they could design their own building, which they've done, they would need about 90,000 square feet. The issue with this building is the obsolete nature of it. It's built in pieces and chunks, page 12, every single piece. the product doesn't flow. So what you'd want is, like, for example, building 4 has a craneway, building 7 has a craneway, and 11 have a craneway, but they don't flow together. So that's the problem. And the middle service area is useless. You would want a cleaner building, you would have a craneway system, and you could do it in 2/3 of the area. So it's the obsolescence factor as well. So that is my presentation. I have absolutely no changes on here. This is, I believe, to be a true representation of the market value, and somewhat coincidental to what we've always advised Westfield on in their in our review of the site and trying to find a more productive building. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, I just have 3 questions. The rent that you chose came from your comparables on page 3.
We looked at the bottom of the range.
So I take it from 680 Mission to about 1093 Sherwin.
Yeah, I didn't put a lot of weight on Mission because that's in bold. That came from the city, and then later on they provided a different number, so I wouldn't be relying on it. Nor 1450 Mountain. We were just looking at yes, some of these buildings. Sherwin is fairly close. It's a better building, a newer building, close to the same size in St. James. So if the building was more useful, a rate of $295 could be attainable. But again, with a property that's like this, when we ended up doing the appraisal for them, we ended up doing the direct comparison approach, and on the direct comparison approach, we're looking at about $14 a foot, which there are several buildings.
That was done in 2003?
No, that's not the value we applied back in 2003. I'm just saying that we did the direct comparison approach back then in our final analysis. Today, if I did it, my number would be about 13, 14 a foot. And there are numerous properties in that are very, very similar on that basis. There are a couple others on page 4, and they're older loft warehouse buildings that we have looked at. The difficulty with these is that they tend to be gross leases and they require some work calculations and multi-levels. So just a few more examples.
Okay, and your vacancy rate, again, it came from page 5?
Yes, that's correct.
So
and it's
this is in St. B, right?
Correct.
So 6.9 is what you have on...
Well, St. B is 6.9, overall is 7.2, and we use the mean of those two. And very similar to what we would do in private practice is look at the overall city rate, look at the local rate. In this case, the inventory in St. B is far more reliable because there's more properties. However, they do run a range from new to bad. Inventory in St. Boniface is 3,100,000 square feet, but they range from the high end, like Terracon, to the low end, like Quintet.
Yeah, those are all the questions.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
I have no questions, just a comment. I'm just wondering, I'm musing out loud that trying to remediate this land would be nearly impossible.
No, it's taking everything out. And then the other problem we'd had on this was to deal with the rail crossing, which is active. Mm-hmm. So Westfield, the property owner, have at least good grandfathered rights with the rail company. They've got an unrestricted crossing. A redevelopment would change that. The rail line would say you're only crossing here, and you're going to have to put in a signaling device if we allow it. There's also a part of the land that's in the northwest corner, requires a lift station, so it might have to be built up. There's rumors that there's a lot of stuff buried underground.
I would think so.
Well, you know how they made the bank, don't you?
That's it for me, thank you, Madam Chair.
Questions?
You said 2016 and 2018 are under appeal?
That's correct.
What was the 2018 value?
2018 was $3,800,000. Our workup on it was $1,934,000.
Okay, thank you. So page 3 of your brief, you said 1821 Wellington, the old Eaton's warehouse at $2.
Well,
You thought, but is that an actual?
let's buy some transport.
Oh, it is, okay.
Now, the park and ride came in after that. I don't think we put park and ride. Oh yes, park and ride is, you know what, I always get this backwards. I'm retracting this all. 146,000 feet is park and ride, 295. 235,000 is buys and transport at 350. And that's because they have the rail.
So you talked about, where is it, page 10? Nope, page 12. Just, so out of the 160,000 square feet, because you had mentioned that this was 1906,
Correct.
and this is the area that's the 50s?
Area 1, which is
Under this, yeah?
under this, that's the 1906.
Right.
And the roof in 25. And then the rest of the ages are listed, so say 7 is 1968.
3, 4, and 5 is in the 50s.
57, yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
7 was done in 68.
So, just out of curiosity, what was taking place here in 1906 when it was built?
It's always been West Steel.
Okay.
I don't know. Grain elevators? No, they didn't have steel then, did they? That was steel elevators.
Grain elevators were made out of wood back then.
Yeah, they would be, drop an old shack on the farm site and fill it full of grain. Yeah,
Okay, just curious.
it was in the documents.
Oh, sorry, actually I missed this. The 2018 assessment on your front was 3.8?
Correct.
Is that was a board decision?
And that was a board decision which we appealed, and it was a cap rate of 9.5% and the assessment department's NOI.
Okay. Thank you. Any wish for a summation?
Okay, just briefly,
I'm good.
I'm just repeating myself, but it is a unique manufacturing facility with lots and lots of problems and alternate use. We have tried to market it, and the assessment department has to come to grips with the concepts of this, that you can't market it, and we're stuck with it as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to take a break.
Just only one left, you know. We agreed on the rest.
5 minutes.
I know.
5 minutes. Okay. Then I'm going to call this hearing back to order, and we are going to hear 130 Lowson Crescent next.
Okay, Board of Revision file number 19-4788, roll number 1000140500, address is 130 Lawson Crescent, roll year is 2020, reference date is April 1st, 2018, assessed value is $3,903,000, and before our hearing, the applicant and I went out and had a discussion, and we've come to a mutual agreement of $3.7 million on this property, and that is our recommendation.
And the reason?
We worked out.
Adjusted net income.
Okay.
But we're not agreeing to the 7%, we're agreeing to 5%.
Yeah, put on hold it, yes, we agreed to the 5%.
Okay. And Mr. McFell, you're agreeing to this?
Yes.
Thank you. Did you get that, Katie? 2.7. And, panel, any questions?
No, thank you. We're happy.
We will move on to 200 Haggard Avenue.
Okay, Board of Revision file number 19-4349, roll numbers 14098771600, address is 200 Haggard Avenue, roll year is 2020, reference date is April 1st, 2018, assessed value is $2,007,000. Parcel use is industrial light manufacturing. Number of buildings is 1, number of premises is 1, number of stories is 1, actual year, built and effective year are both 2001, wall height is 24 feet, zoning is M2 manufacturing general, the land area is 177,403 square feet, which is approximately 4.07 acres. The plan area is 16,040 square feet, same with the gross floor area and leasable area, 16,040 square feet. The land to plan area is 11.06 to 1. So if you turn to page 2, you'll notice that there's been 2 sales on this property, one in March 2000 and for the amount of $300,000. The next one was April 4th, 2012 for the amount of $1.602 million. It's fully owner occupied, so there's no net leases. On page 13 is the income expense that they submitted, and you can see it's fully owner occupied there. On page 3 is my rent comparables. So you can see all leases are current in relation to the reference date. All comparables are industrial storage warehouses. Effective ages range from 1974 to 2000. Wall heights range from 20 feet to 31 feet. Leasable areas range from approximately 13,500 square feet to 17,000 square feet. Net rents range from $6.95 a square feet to $8.90 per square feet. All comparables are zoned either M2 or M1. On the next page, I have some land comparables. So the subject has surplus land as opposed to excess land of approximately 64,809 square feet. Sale dates range from October 2013 to April 2016, approximately 2 to 5 years prior to the reference date. Sales range in size from approximately 56,000 square feet to 65,500 square feet. Sales price per square foot ranges from $3.16 per square foot to $5.82 per square foot, with an average sales price of $4.27 per square foot. So we are assessing the land value to be $211,500 or approximately $3.26 per square foot. So if you turn to page 5, there's our workup. We're using a rental rate of $7.24 per square foot. We're allowing for 3.5% vacancy, even though there's been zero vacancy since at least 2012. We're allowing for 2% non-recoverable expenses and a vacancy shortfall of $3.75 per square foot. That results in an NOI of 107,719 square feet. That results in $107,719. We're utilizing an overall cap rate of 6%. That results in a capitalized value of $1,795,317. As mentioned previously, we're assessing the surplus land at $212,000. This results in a assessed value of $2,007,000. So if you turn to page 8, there's the map of the subject property. And there's below that is the subject parcel boundaries. So you can see it's a pretty large piece of property there. On page 10 is the overhead view, and then on page 11 is the overhead of the building. And on page 12 is the street view of the building. So taking into account the most recent sale from late 2012 in the amount of $1,602,000, which was 6 years prior to the reference date, we believe the assessed value of $2,007,000 to be fair and equitable, and I respectfully ask that the board confirm this value, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld.
Yes, your valuation, is this all in the model?
Yes.
And so then the model determined, or after looking at the land area, that there was additional land?
Yes, looking at the land to plan area, yes.
Okay.
It's zoned M1, M2, which does not require a lot of outdoor use. So that's why we were saying that there's surplus land there.
Now, on your picture on the site, page 10, where would you deem this excess land to be?
Well, it's surplus land, not excess land. So surplus, you can't subdivide.
Right.
Excess, you can.
Okay, right. I was just clarifying that.
Surplus land allows you to improve on it, so you can.
Now, when you make this distinction between surplus and excess, do you also make the distinction in your selection of your value?
Of the comparables?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Your comparables on page 4. Are these for sales of the...
Yes, and I apologize, I do not have the overhead pictures of those properties, but yes, we do.
But are these... Sorry, you're saying this is surplus land, right?
Right, yes.
So are your comparables on page 4 the sale of surplus land?
No, they're just vacant land.
Right.
So, yeah.
So they're developable on their own?
Right.
Where surplus land is, the highest and best use is linked to the highest and best use of the current parcel, or
Right.
entire parcel.
Correct, yes.
And it's also a fractional interest. None of these are fractional interests here, these sales, are they?
No, they are not, but you can't find comparables like that.
I agree. So how can you come up with a value if you can't find a comparable that fits your value definition?
Well, it's zone M2, so M2, I'll just give you the definition of M2.
Well, we know the definition. It's a question of meeting, like the concept of surplus land, you have to compare it to other surplus land.
M2 does not, M2 has, M2 allows for limited outdoor operations. Because it's zone M2 and it's on M3, where M3 allows for storage of operations outside of the buildings, This is considered surplus because it's such a big parcel and it's
Well,
zoned.
I understand, but my question is, your comparables aren't surplus land sales, are they?
There are no surplus land comparables, so you can't.
How do you get a number then?
Well, because you can have your improvements spread out over if you have the excess land, so it does have value to it.
You are aware that the sale, that market value is determined by the rights associated with the land, not the dirt itself.
Correct, yes.
Now, you agree with this statement, and this is from the Appraisal Institute's document. Surplus land is not needed to support the existing improvement, typically cannot be separated from the property and sold off. Surplus land does not have an independent highest and best use and may contribute a minimal value.
But it also goes on to say, I don't have it in front of me, but I've read that, yes. It says it can contribute value if you could improve on the land there. And then there should be a little gray box on the side maybe, if I remember correctly. Is that in your brief?
No, this is just from the Appraisal Institute. So, but you agree it cannot be sold off.
It cannot be sold off.
So the application of a surplus land value then is hypothetical.
No, because you can expand on that building. For example, with the building we did previously on.
To attribute a value to it is hypothetical then. It's still always hypothetical because it doesn't have an independent marketable title. You're giving it an independent value, which means you have to hypothetically assume it has this value. Do you not?
I believe there's value in surplus land.
Now, the picture, page 10, did you note the land on the east side being slightly discolored? You're aware that the sewer line runs underneath there and they can't use it anyway?
Is that 232 or the other side?
The east side, on page 10.
Okay. No, I'm not, but I think there is, if you're saying that there is contaminated land.
No, but when Inksbrook Park was built, there were service issues, and the land, initially it was serviced from Inkster, which is a temporary arrangement, and then eventually the water and the sewer came in from the north and then serviced the property owner to the south of this through an easement put through this property. So you weren't aware of that?
No.
Okay. So that should have an impact on the usability of land anyway, wouldn't it?
So are you, sorry, there's a sewer line running where?
On the edge of the property.
So along the parcel boundary?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
This part? Can you identify it? But our map does not say east or west.
We don't know
so-
which is north, south, east, or
Oh,
west.
okay, well, just a second. And I have to find the sewer line.
So you were citing Assessor's Brief, page 10?
Oh, I'm sorry, it was my mistake. The sewer line and water line, service lines are on the west side. And,
Which is
which is this side.
Oh,
The one that touches, where the property line appears.
This
to
dark
tou-
piece here?
To touch the building.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, actually,
shadow? Or that's, I don't know.
None of these maps show northeast, south, and west.
well, this is a north orientation. At least on my map, it's a north orientation. So the west side has the sewer line. The question I meant to ask was the no-build zone on the east side, which is the other side. Did you investigate the zoning issues with that?
I'm not aware of any no-build on this site.
You notice the property immediately to the east. There's a residential house there. You aware of the cave is?
No, I do not see the residential house.
Okay.
What are you referring to? Sorry.
You know what, I'll get into it in my presentation. And it's just, takes me back a long way. So let me rephrase that question. If you are aware that there are no build zones on this property, would that impact the concept of surplus land?
Yes, but I am not aware of any.
Okay. And have you inspected?
No.
Is it typical for a building to have an office area?
It depends on what they do and if it's storage or not.
Would it enhance the marketability if you had an office?
Yes and no.
Okay. And do you know what they do in this building?
No, I do not. But I see there's loading docks and whatnot, so I do not know what they do.
In the entire history of its assessment, has excess or surplus land ever been applied?
I would assume so, but I don't have that.
Attempted.
I do not have that information in front of me.
All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
I'd like to explore what you were just talking about a little bit more. So this is the first year that excess land is being assigned?
I do not know that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Surplus land.
Surplus land, sorry. I just, yeah. I think that's it, so I'm sorry, thank you.
No questions from me.
No questions. Mr. Neufeld?
Yes.
It's yours.
You know, I'm going to tell you some stuff that's not in my report. It is verbal. I was on the scene. This is actually my first real estate job I ever was involved with was working for Fort Garry Industries, who were the first occupant of Innsbruck Industrial, and they have 21 acres to the south. So the challenges, of course, were the water and sewer, so it does go through this side here. But the biggest problem on it is that the land on the east side, it was initially subject to typical zoning. When they went for their zoning permission to get it changed to the current M2, they were faced with the normal zoning restriction, which is detailed on page 7, where the rear sideline abuts the rear side lot line of an R1 district. 25-yard must be provided, and it must be landscaped. So the property immediately east, there is a house on the site. It is a working site, and the owners had resisted this. So not only is there a 25-foot required landscape site, there's a 100-foot buffer, no-build zone. And that stretches all the way from Haggard down to Inkster. And so not only is 200 Haggard affected, but so is 2125 Inkster, which is underneath it. And on the map, what it looks like is, we were involved with it, me and my ex-partner Douglas Masser. What it looks like is you have two restrictive areas, the green zone here and the no-build zone here. And the green zone there and the no-build zone there. So the total depth, I believe it's 125 linear feet, which explains why the building that you're looking at now is sited all the way on the west part in order to get to the no-build zone. This fabric coverall building is not considered permanent, so it could occupy it. So that restriction is still in effect, and to give you an idea that I was working for Fort Garry Industries, and in order to try to remedy it for themselves, they purchased this strip of land here, and so that they could get rid of that buffer zone. 200 Haggard hasn't got rid of it yet. I apologize, we should have had the drawing in there. So, which is why the concept of surplus land is not appropriate. It's been taken away by the setback. And this is one of the more unusual setbacks that was applied. I have a scrapbook full of them, of where the neighbors got together and hated having a development and forcibly put in green zones, even residential neighborhood versus residential neighborhood. It happens because that's the community committee clout, and when a developer wants to do something, he'll have to agree to it or he doesn't get to develop. So no surplus land. Now the building itself was built for a particular business, powder coating business, and I'm just trying to remember the name of the owner. He was actually wrote inspirational books for business. You probably remember his name before I do, Winnipegger. But his main client was MacDon for powder coating. And powder coating is basically, there's a large conveyor belt inside, and pieces of machinery get hauled through a paint booth, and the powder coating is done, and they come out and they dry. There is no office in the site. There's it's like the old show WKRP, if anyone remembers it, ages yourself. It's like Les Nessman's office. They have tape on the floor and said this is the area for your 5-minute break or 15-minute break, whatever. I have a picture of it, but it's not very good. I've inspected the property several times. Anyway, MacDon, as their primary client, decided that they got together with the owner and decided to buy the business and the entire facility, and then turn it over 100% to MacDon's usage only. And that's why the sale price is irrelevant. I mean, it was a business transaction, and it was between an existing supplier relationship. And it's a little bit out of the way for MacDon, but the issue with the powder coating is that because it's deemed to be a paint spray booth, at the time of the zoning, the restrictions on it were stronger actually than they are today. Today you can get it in virtually every M zoning, but back then the M zonings weren't all permitting it, and this one did. And the reason it permitted it had to do with Fort Garry Industries, who were south of the property, because they successfully lobbied to have the zoning improved. They have a rubber relining facility, or they had one, and they needed that zoning for it, which then allowed the other users to have what were deemed to be, I don't know, heavy manufacturing. And MacDon couldn't find a piece of land in their neck of the woods where they could build a new building with the powder coating, which was deemed a spray booth. And again, the zoning has changed on that, so but at the time, that's what they were faced with. So, as an owner-occupied property, we looked at the rent and the lack of an office. I mean, I suppose someone could build one out. I kind of apologize here to the assessor because I don't think the rent we put on here is appropriate. In previous years, yeah, I you know, typical me, I'm forever changing stuff. I think a higher rent should be applied, $6 a square foot. That's what we've looked at in previous years. I would apply it, and that's consistent with our chart on page 3 to a newer facility, but one lacking the office. And for example, there's one at Wilkes, which is a better location at $707 a foot, which is a Superior building, Superior location. and that would stand out as a good mix for us. So that changes my rent to 96,240. I'm using the same calculation of vacancy, which is Inkster. That number for Inkster is much more stable because the inventory is very large, and that's a good indication of what you should see in the city of Winnipeg for a industrial vacancy rate. And I do have the entire inventory listed here, and the Inkster inventory is generally doesn't have all those nice flex warehouse buildings that really aren't industrial, just glorified in office or industrial that are done for office. Most of those are located in St. James and Fort Garry, so Inkster is mostly warehousing. Sorry, and I'm just going to change, and I'm going to use the assessor's shortfall rate. $50. So my NOI is $76,959. Earlier, the assessor asked me a question about, this chart on page 4, and that's how our office has been trying to do rates. What this chart fails to account for are other issues, and even though it does not have an office, the powder coating facility, in my mind, would be very attractive for a rental rate. And as well, a rate of capitalization would be better, and I'm going to use 8%. So my value number is $961,983. And the assessor made a comment to me earlier. He said we're kind of far apart, and totally our fault here. 961,983. Rounded to 962,000. That's my value. The previous year's assessment at $1,422,000 is under appeal, as is the year prior to that. And we had been looking for a value last year of $900,000. And did not get it. But of course, in all the years we've dealt with this property, I believe about 3 or 4 times, the assessment department has requested a surplus land adjustment, and the boards have never granted it. And of course, you're free to make your own decisions, but it has never been granted. And the reason being is that the caveats on the east side, and I guess when we did our workup, it had slipped into the recesses of memory because I thought the matter was finished and done with. But we should have brought it in rebuttal to at least showing you the sketch on it. But I am not quoting from hearsay. I was working on the deal at the time, so this was first-hand involvement.
Excuse me, Mr. Neufeld, we just need to take a break for one moment. I'm sorry to stop you in the middle. The assessor had asked for some time at this right, yeah, he just needs to take a call.
Just
sorry.
5 minutes.
Reordering this food, right?
No, I'm sorry. It's my son. So.
Sorry. So I've been through all the other evidence already, and all I wanted to point out was a change to $6 and a reduction of the cap rate. This, I don't want to mislead anyone here. This is a pretty good building. It does need some work on it to bring it to get a higher market value, and work costs money, and that's what's holding it back. And the land value is a non-issue. When Innsbruck, Klaus Rossler was the original developer of Innsbruck, and he did go bankrupt doing it. He was very ambitious, 3 sections of land to turn into an industrial park, and it's nowhere, it's probably at 40% capacity right now. And this was started in 1996. And the water and the sewer were part of the issues, as well as the planning areas and the setbacks from the land. At the time, not only did this particular landowner object to it, but the city itself had the policy plate as future residential. So even though the land to the east is still zoned agricultural, at the time all of it was agricultural, now some of it has been rezoned. The policy plate said future residential, so that was the reason for the 125-foot setbacks. We've asked for administrative removals of them, and they can't be done. Because they are now obsolete, because there's now a change in use. But as I said, that's what wipes out the surplus concept. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Questions?
Yes. Sorry, I just had a couple of questions. One about the sale. You had mentioned something about the sale was part of a business sale, or?
Right. The former owner was one of the tradespeople used by MacDon to custom powder coat small parts. Like MacDon's plant in Moray is a large powder coat facility for the big parts, and they needed a second line to do small part runs, and they couldn't get it done on Moray because that would require a new building, and they couldn't get the paint booth approved in that zoning. So they were using this guy to customize, and then finally bought him out.
So Land Titles has it registered at 1.6 million approximately. Do you have proof that it's not the building and it's a business also?
Well, the land titles will never have the registration of the business in it, right?
But
it's sold with the business, which means that it wasn't a transaction for the real estate alone.
So the cost would be, or the transfer cost would be based on the what? Why would they register a larger number?
The building doesn't sell unless the business sells. So it's part of a different reason for buying the property. And going back to the concept of market value, to buy and sell it, you should be buying and selling your real estate, and that's what defines that it's market value. When there's something else included in it, it's no longer market value. You pay more to buy the real estate to get the business.
And the other question I had was in regards to your setbacks. Do you have any proof in your briefs?
Not in my brief.
Setbacks?
It's very simple to see the registration at Property and Planning.
Because that didn't come up on my system.
For the setbacks? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have the original plot plan. It's actually in my file for 2125 Inkster, and if I can remember, I'll send it to you. And I know it doesn't help us here at the hearing today, but it's the reason. I mean, okay, here's the proof for it: is why is this building sited all the way over to the west side?
I don't know why they built it there. They
had
have a Quonset on the other side,
Right,
and they
which
have
is
parking,
non-permanent.
which is asphalted.
Right. That's after the first 25 feet. So you can allow parking in the big setback.
There's no proof in here in regards to the
That's-
setback.
that's all right.
Yeah, those are all the questions.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
No questions for me. No questions for me.
Mr. Neufeld, page 1 of your brief for your 2018 assessment was the 1 million.
That's correct, 1,422,000.
Yeah, that was a board order?
That is correct. And it was based on the assessor's rent, 7.5% cap rate, and no excess land. If the assessor doesn't mind, I have the office pictures, and I'll let him look at it first if he has any objections.
So you're entering that into evidence?
I can.
Yep. Sorry, just one quick question. You had said MacDon couldn't get a permit for a paint booth on mooring because they've got one already, and I thought they were expanding there and getting more and more
Yeah, they had
land.
to put it on a new site. They didn't have room on the existing site. So they own, well, actually one of the other buildings here, and they own 8 properties in that area. So I think most of Murray is it's a different bunch of, a mix of uses. Just a second here. In our the zoning that I have on pages 12 to 15, these are the change in zoning, and the principal use table on page 13, for example, on the site, there's use specific standards, and there's an asterisk, and in the auto category, the asterisk used to be having to do with body shops. And what changed in the body shops was the change in the paint system. It used to be deemed, the way they did it before the modern downdraft paint booths was smellier, and they exhausted right out to the outside air. So the new downdrafts recirculate and don't expel. And that was the change in zoning that over the years. So they couldn't get a new one in Murray Park. Why they could get it in Innsbrook is because Fort Garry Industries had sought and already received a conditional use permit for the rubber roller relining process. And the rubber roller process is people bring in their old rubber rolls. And there's a business that actually stripped it off and put on new ones and put it in the autoclave. And getting their conditional use or their variance for that allowed the previous owner to get his paint booth variance. And then MacDon picked up the variance. Not necessary anymore, but they've got the building.
Okay, any wish for a summation? Mr. Neufeld? No?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. So we're going to move on to 21 Middle Park Road.
Okay, Board of Revision, file number 19-432, roll number 0708131350. Address is 21 Murray Park Road. Roll year is 2020, reference date is April 1st, 2018. We're assessing the property at $2,739,000. We have come to an agreement before the hearing. The applicant and I and we're also recommending to the board a value of $2.5 million, and that's based on adjusted net income.
Mr. Neufeld, you are agreeing to this?
Yes.
Panel, any questions? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to 600 Maureen.
Okay, Board Revision File Number 19-4351, Roll Number 07080359000. Address is 600 Laurier Street. Roll year is 2020. Reference date is April 1st, 2018. Assessed value is $1,124,000. And again, the applicant and I have come to an agreement of, and we're also recommending to the board $1 million for an assessed value, and that's also based on adjusted net income.
And Mr. Neufeld, you're agreeing to this?
Yes.
And board, any questions? No.
Yeah, Austin Powers in the room.
We'll move on to 1349 Border Street.
Okay, Board Revision File Number 19-4552, Roll Number 0701009100. Address is 1349 Border Street. Roll year is 2020. Reference date is April 1st, 2018. We're assessing the subject at $1,516,000. And the applicant and I have come to an agreement of $1,257,000, and we are recommending that to the board, and it's based on adjusted net income.
257? 1,257?
Yeah, $1,257,000.
And again, Mr. Neufeld, you're agreeing to this?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Panel, any questions? And we will move on to 1608 St. James Street.
Okay, Board Revision File Number 19-227. Roll Number 0701022500. Address is 1608 St. James Street. Roll year is 2020. Reference date is April 1st, 2018. Assessed value is $816,000. The applicant and I have come to an agreement of $800,000, and we're recommending that to the board, and that's based on adjusted net income.
Mr. Neufeld, you're in agreement with this?
Yes.
Thank you. Board,